Welcome back to Colorado Sports Connection. We're talking with Jack Corrigan, the Rockies radio play-by-play announcer. Jack, when we last left, I asked you about the ballparks. I've grown up in Chicago, so number one for me is Wrigley Field. Let's hear your top 5 stadiums.
Wow, I'd have to say Coors Field, Camden Yards, AT&T in San Francisco. I like going to Wrigley, but as I said, don't really care too much for the booth, the submarine as we call it. I really like the new Target Field in Minnesota, and Yankee Stadium's Yankee Stadium. So, I mean, the new one obviously would be different, but I'd say those would be the ones that would jump off the list first.
And let's talk a little bit about the Colorado Rockies 2010 season. Disappointing, they didn't make the playoffs, but in my opinion, and everybody in sports has an opinion, Jim Tracy did one heck of a job with this squad, especially with all the injuries that he had to encounter with. Now, all teams have injuries, but he seemed to have more than most, especially to his key players.
Oh, there was no question about that when you think you lost everybody in your starting rotation at one point in the season except for Ubaldo Jimenez. You didn't have your closer for the first 2+ months of the season. You went through a variety of injuries among your position players. I really think Jim did a masterful job. I think he's a great baseball strategist, and even better than that, he does such a good job keeping the players positive. It was a funny circumstance in Denver that we got disappointed that they didn't make the playoffs, yet this was the first time that they went into the final week of the season still in the hunt and did make the playoffs. That's what a contending team is. That's what you want to have. So you're disappointed, but you know you're pretty close, and maybe next year will be the year.
You know, you can look at all the stretches and say, okay, this hurt the Rockies, and again, everybody has their opinions. All-Star break. The Rockies are 2 games behind the San Diego Padres. They come back from the All-Star break, and what I felt hurt them is that they had that 10-game road trip and they go 1-9 or 2-8.
2-9. It was an 11-game trip.
Okay.
That was the final section of Troy Tulowitzki's absence, the 33 games that Tulo missed. And the Rockies went 17-16 while he was gone. But as you just point out, they were 14-7 without him going into that final stretch. And I think that's where they really missed his leadership. He is a remarkable leader for a young player. Besides his talent, just the energy, the leadership that he brings to the clubhouse, the dugout, on the field, all of that was missed. When you think about it, there were 4 walk-off losses in that game, in that series of games on the road. Of the 9 losses, they had the tying run on base in all 9 games that they lost at one point in that whole scenario, and I think that's what hurt them, made it too difficult to overcome. Now,
you're with the team, you're all the games, and a guy like me, we're just on the outside, and we hear about the importance of a Troy Tulowitzki. But when I sit back, it's like, come on, guys, it's baseball, but you're talking about his leadership. How important is that, and how does it affect the other players?
In baseball, I think people look at the game and say, you know, it doesn't have the physicality of football or the up and down that soccer and basketball have. But what it has is the continuous nature of the season, that it is every day with very few days off. And it is that sometimes travel 3 time zones to play the next game. And the emotional and mental strain, in addition to the physical nature of playing the sport, I think is greater than any of the others. And you need to have someone who leads by example, who shows up every day, hurt or otherwise. And you also need a guy who's not afraid to say, hey, if we're going to win, this is what you need to do.
Yeah, it's exciting to have Troy, and then we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about another great Rocky, Ubaldo Jimenez. And you got to call a no-hitter, and we'd like to hear about that and share that with the audience. When we come back, we'll talk with Jack Corrigan right here on Colorado Sports Connection.